I want to welcome you to this LinkedIn Live event where we are going to talk about, I guess it's really just how do you create wealth with accumulating residential real estate? I mean, this is a question that's on a lot of people's minds. A lot of people want to create wealth that way, and they don't maybe want to be in the stock market, but they have these dreams of owning rentals and getting passive income. And so that's going to be a lot of what we're going to talk about in this LinkedIn Live. And I have a very special guest, Chris Crane, who's head of or business development manager, I guess, at Crane Financial Group. So welcome, Chris.
Great to have you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, good. So yeah, it's just a real treat to have you to talk about this very topic, because it's something that, you know, as a realtor for 20 years, I myself have had rental properties and have wanted to help people accumulate, and have clients that have accumulated rental properties, and it's worked out really well for them, especially if they bought at the right times and, you know, have managed those homes properly. And so I thought it would be a really great topic, and you have a ton of experience. I know we talked a little bit before getting on that, you know, your experience, I guess, with residential real estate and investments. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about how you help people with investments and on the investment side?
Absolutely. Happy to do that. My journey began in 1985. Interest rates were 18.5, and I desperately wanted to buy my first home. And the only asset that I had for a down payment was actually a free and clear Mazda car. And I went to the bank and I said, well, I have this for collateral. And they said, well, how about if we give you a job as the manager of the home loan department, or excuse me, as a receptionist for the home loan department. And we can kind of use a combination of that for a down payment to get you into your first place. And my first place ended up being a manufactured home way back in the early 80s. But the key there is just, I learned right off the bat that just looking for any way to come up with that first down payment to get into your first property is the best way to launch yourself into building your real estate portfolio. My first one ended up being owner occupied, but I quickly turned that into a rental. And next thing you know, I was moving on to my next property, which ended up being new construction. Rates got a lot better, and things started working off of that. So turned the manufactured home into a rental, moved into my next property, and so on and so on and so on. And so I have now been loving helping people finance and build portfolios for 38 years. Lots of experience, lots of great success stories, and creative niches now for financing is what I'm finding that people really need. They really need a creative, straightforward way to start accumulating rental properties. And that's what my expertise is. And I've got lots of great success stories for that for you.
Great. Oh, it is, you know, there's so much to know about it. And that's why I was so excited to have you on today on this, because, you know, for somebody who's out there, I thought that this would be great for people that, you know, maybe they do want to start accumulating, they're say in their 20s or their early 30s, and they want to start accumulating rental properties, but they just don't know, you know, how to go about that. And of course, the financing side is a huge part of that, because I think a lot of people think, oh, I can't afford it, you know, I don't have the income, and that may not necessarily be true, right? And so, so to talk a little bit about that, and then, you know, just talk through the things that you need to know, the things that are really important. So tell us, like, if I were to want to go buy an investment property right now, and with real estate, you know, our income mine's pretty flat for the year, I would say. The whole market is actually down quite a bit. It's down about 40% as far as transaction sales for mostly primary homes. But if I want to go accumulate a rental property, how would I potentially qualify for that, or how would that work?
Well, this is the beauty now, is that we have been through all types of transitions as types of lending. We saw some kind of interesting programs that were being offered in the 2007, 2008 arena. Those didn't prove to work real well. And the biggest thing is cash flow now. So what we're looking at is we're analyzing the cash flow of these properties more so than your ability to qualify. So I want to explain that to you. If you're coming to me now and you wanted to buy a rental, we are not going to ask you about your personal income structure at all. We are really going to focus on the debt service coverage ratio of the property you want to buy. And it's called a DSCR loan. And what we want to do, ideally, just round numbers, is we want a dollar for dollar coverage on that proposed rent. So you're going to look at a property, you're going to say, hey, Chris, I believe that the proposed rent on this is going to be X. Let's say it's $2,700 a month. So we're going to say, all right, $2,700 a month. We're going to make sure then that the house payment equals or is similar to that $2,700 a month. We don't have to have a lease in place. You can buy a property. We're going to ask an appraiser to give us a survey of rents, and we're going to use the average proposed rents to help that property qualify. So really now what we're doing in order to help people qualify for rentals is we're qualifying the property more so than the buyer. And it's really a cool way to look at this and to start building and accumulating real estate when you might not show taxable income that we used to have to verify. We have a better way now.
Got it. Okay, so let's just put a case study here. Like you said, you threw out that 2,700, but let's round it. Let's say I'm going to buy a 500. I've identified a duplex that is $500,000, just for example.
Okay.
And the potential rent on that duplex is $4,000 a month.
Okay.
Right. So it's $48,000 of income. And then what you're going to do is you're going to, have that appraiser make sure that those rents make sense.
Right.
That we're going to get that amount, that $4,000 per month. And then you are going to look at what the loan costs are on that, the monthly loan. And we're going to try to figure out how much I need to put down to then qualify for that. Is that right?
Correct. And there are a few different stipulations as far as how much you have to put down. Some of it is based on credit score, but we can do these loans starting at a 680 and above. That's kind of a benchmark. Not to say that we couldn't possibly find the ability to do it if you're under a 680, because there's a lot of exceptions out there. However, let's just say that. So we're going to look at that. We're also going to look at how many units. So if it's a single family, duplex, triplex, fourplex, we're going to look at that. And then that cash flow, we want to work it backwards. So if you come to me and say, this duplex is going to cash flow at $4,000 in rent, I'm going to work that backwards at what loan would equal property taxes, homeowners insurance, and a house payment to be close to that $4,000. Now, there are programs that we have under this debt service coverage ratio loan that will allow for less than a 1-to-1 ratio. So for instance, if it turned out, and I don't want to get in the weeds here, but I just want to say that you can go as low as maybe 75% debt coverage and not necessarily a 1-to-1 debt coverage. Sometimes you even get a bonus if you find one where your rent actually exceeds what the house payment's going to be. But our goal and intention is to kind of make it a 1-to-1 ratio so that it cash flows across the board and that you're not having to contribute each month to help make that mortgage payment.
Right. Okay. So if we go back to our example and we say that $500,000 house, and we know we're getting rental income of $4,000, I know I'm going to need to put down probably at least 25% on that, but maybe even more. So maybe like $150,000, for example.
Okay.
I'll put down, because if I put 100, that would be 20%. So I can't quite do that. So let's say I'm going to put 150,000. My loan amount is going to be 350,000. So what you're doing is the calculation on the interest on the loan, the principal that you're going to have to pay it down, taxes, insurance, and you're adding that up, and if it equals $4,000 and my $4,000 of rent's coming in, I'm good. Like I
You
qualify.
are good. You are good. And we don't care about your own personal income. We're qualifying the income of that property.
Okay,
And
so you're
that
not
is
looking.
such a neat concept.
That is because I'm a self-employed, and I've run a self-employed person, right? And
Right?
so many times when I go to the mortgage people, they're like, confused with my tax returns because, I've got my business and then I've got my personal income, and it goes up and down with, it's because our business is very cyclical, and so it can be really challenging. But this is like a really great thing to know about, because if you are a self-employed individual out there and you just think, oh well, my income's too all over the board, and I've got the 150 for the down payment, but I don't think they'll qualify me, then that's not necessarily going to be true. They can talk to you and then figure out how they can buy these investment properties.
Exactly, exactly. And the neat thing is to look at all the different sources. And I really try to talk with clients about, okay, where might you come up with that down payment? And knowing different ways where you might be able to raise the money for that down payment to buy the first one, and then so on and so on. Again, the better they cash flow, the less down payment you have to do. And so therefore, we want to take whatever assets you have available and help you to divide them out to get as many properties as you possibly can based on the assets that you have. And so there's been a variety. I actually learned from my clients. I love this. This is why I've done it for 38 years, because the clients keep teaching me more and more as we go through and do this. It's relatively a new way for us to help people accumulate properties. It used to be you had to qualify. And just like what you said, how many people are self-employed or 100% commission on their job, or who knows what? A lot of people just came out of COVID with a completely different income structure than what they had going into COVID. That's really honestly where this all came from. Was because it became more and more difficult, because even if you are a W-2 wage earner, your income might have been very sporadic for a couple of years through no fault of your own. But maybe you had been on a job where you had accumulated a lot in your 401k, and you know that you can take some of that money, potentially buy rentals. Those rentals will cover themselves, and you can just handle your own basic expenses for your own living, but you're not having to prove that you've got excess income in order to cover these rentals now. And that is the beauty of this.
That's fascinating. Okay, so I want to throw a couple more examples at you. So let's say, where can you draw down payments from? So let's say I have a line of credit on my house. My house is, tripled in value. I put a line of credit in place already, and I have, $250,000, $300,000 of line of credit that I can pull down. Can I use that line of credit on my house to put as a down payment?
Absolutely. That's perfect. We actually just secured one of those for a client about 10 days ago. And it's a beautiful thing. And so any secured asset like that. So your line of credit is secured with your home. In my instance, I had a free and clear car. I was able to go and borrow against my car because we could do an appraisal. This was back in the day, go to the bank, get a loan against my car. I can prove that it's a secured loan, borrow against portfolios, your 401k potentially, if you can borrow against that according to the rules of your 401k administrator, you need to check with them. But looking at other properties and getting like a HELOC or maybe even a cash out refinance would make sense for you. A lot of people have different equity positions in existing real estate, and tapping into that to do these programs does make sense for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that that's a key point is, there are different pieces or people that you need on your team, right? You have your mortgage person like yourself that knows about these. You have your real estate agent like myself who knows about the market, knows good locations, deferred maintenance, those kinds of things where you can give really great expertise. But then you also need, the accountant or your retirement loan, administrator, whoever's managed, to make sure that if you're going to pull from those, that you're not in violation of anything or going to incur any additional penalties. So that's
Correct.
important. But
Yeah, and that's huge.
yeah,
That
it's
is
huge.
huge to have that team in place. And then once you do, you can go back and talk to them about, if you have a CPA, talk to them about depreciation and how the IRS is viewing depreciation differently each year, and maybe capital gains and how that's being treated differently, maybe 1031 exchanges. You might need to talk to somebody about that. So having those team members in place, you're spot on. That's exactly what you need to have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always about having the right people in the right seats. We say that in high performance coaching all the time. It's like, we talk a lot about having a clear plan, being really clear on where you want to go. And I think that that's a really important piece if you want to build wealth through residential real estate or any kind of real estate, anything in life really, but having a clear plan of where you want to go and having somebody that can ask you the right questions. What are you looking for? Are you looking for recurring income later on down the road when you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s?
Right.
What's that look like? And then what's the potential downfalls? What are the risks? Because one of the things I really love about and how people really truly build wealth in real estate is this concept of leverage. Because
Correct.
you can take, if you can borrow, say on your 401k, or you can convert some of that into like a self-directed IRA. And again, you need the team in place to help you do this. You're taking, say, $150,000 or $200,000 to put into that rental property, but you're actually getting leverage on that. So meaning that, it's 200 or 150, in our example, just going back to our example, or $150,000, but I'm leveraged into a $500,000 investment. So if the investment goes up 10%, or last year went up 30% in 1 year coming out of COVID, and granted, it has leveled and it's pretty stable right now. In fact, some areas it's gone down a little bit, so that's still a good opportunity. But to be able to leverage into that $500,000 investment, so if the market goes up 10%, well, that's $50,000 now essentially that you made on your $150,000 investment. So that combined with depreciation, combined with principal pay down that you're getting from the rents that you're bringing in, that's how people really do create wealth for themselves. And in many cases, in a fairly short period of time, potentially, depending on where the market is in the cycle. So
Right. And I like looking at it that you really have two different things going on here. You talked about it. You've got the appreciation of the asset, and then you've also got somebody else paying down your mortgage, and you're getting the tax benefits off of that. I mean, it's a double benefit if you really sat and thought about it. And I learned a good lesson from somebody who had retired recently and had a substantial 401k. That was going to be his retirement. However, when he looked at it, he realized that just drawing off of that 401k and maybe getting tiny little dividends off of that wasn't going to cut it moving forward. Because let's face it, more and more people are facing retirement and not having enough of a cash flow and an income stream in order to sustain them for 30 or 40 years, depending on when they retire. He had figured out how to take what he had always dreamt would be his cash flow for retirement, which was his 401k, and he was of age. And he took that and used this program, and it was so incredible. I learned so much from him, and it gave me a lot of great ideas to help other people on how to think differently about your retirement. And I think that that is so key right now for so many people.
I totally agree with you because I'm in that boat myself. I mean, I'm looking at my stock portfolio, and it's been flat to has gone down a little bit, and it's hard to see that amount of money sitting there and not working for me. And I'm getting closer to my retirement years, and I'm like, hey, I got to start making some money on this, or I got to have a plan. And just understanding how, what you get for recurring revenue and how that can offset your expenses. And then if you have Social Security coming in, and you're starting to think about all of those different pieces. And so this is where it takes really putting the team in place so
Right.
that you can create the plan, you can have the right people in the right seats, you can work on the right things to be successful. So I really look, I actually look at the whole team, even including your portfolio manager, because a lot of
Absolutely.
that's the one thing that I've always, kind of had a hard time with, is usually most people's, the bulk of their net worth is tied up in their homes. They're not thinking about investment real estate. They're thinking about, how do I just keep contributing to my stock portfolio? But all the entities that really are important are not talking to one another, including your accountant. So I look at that as just a super important piece. Any other, like, if you were to give some advice, knowing what you know now after all of your experience, what would you tell somebody who's, say, in their mid 20s, and they got a pretty good job, they're making maybe $150,000 a year, they've saved up some money. What would you tell that person today?
Just work on getting that first property, because that first property will springboard you into others. And just sit down and figure out, a lot of times you want your first property to be owner occupied, but let's look outside the box a little bit. What happens if your first property might be an owner occupied duplex? You're living on one side, you're receiving rents on the other side. That could be a really good way to kind of get your feet wet in this landlord thing and figuring out how to be a landlord, the cash flow coming from the other side. Usually the cash flow coming from the other side, the rents, like on a duplex, will really help defray the total mortgage and defray and reduce the cost of you as the occupant. You maybe are there a year, you turn your side into a rental, you move on to the next one, and away you go. I just believe you have to get started somewhere. I can tell you personally, I was able to purchase a piece of land. Didn't really know what I was going to do with it, but it does have timber on it. And it actually has just been sitting there for 12 years. I have used that piece of free and clear land to cross collateralize, to springboard into other properties. I have used that, and I was able to use that. And cross collateralization is like going and getting a loan, and you use part of a down payment and you use part of an asset that you have that's free and clear, like my land. So that's just an example of, just get out there, get something. You want it to be a good something, though. And that's why I want them to have a really good agent like you, because you don't want to buy something that isn't a good first investment. And I think that that's really important also, to not overpay and to get in a good location, whatever. But looking at that, and if I could have held on to everything that I ever owned from 1985 up until now, unfortunately, nobody gave me this education. And I wish somebody would have sat down and said, hey, you don't have to sell this. Turn it into a rental if you're needing to move. Figure out how to hold on to these properties, because you will be sorry that you sold them. And oh my goodness, if I could go back, that's what I would do. I would have held every single thing that I ever owned, but nobody talked to me about doing this. So I just want to spread the good word about how exciting this is to build a real estate portfolio. And I would be feeling a lot different at 59 and a half had I had that house back from 1985.
I totally agree with you. I bought my first townhome in Bellevue, in the Factory area, for $135,000. Today, it's probably worth like 1.1 million.
Unreal.
And I think about, like, why did I sell that? And at the time, I was in my 20s, and I was like, oh, well, I just don't want to deal with it. I don't want to manage. But those things can be, you can hire other people, again, build the team out to help you. So it's no sweat off your back to just own these assets, and then they start to work for you, and they give you incredible flexibility later on in life, because you can go get the line of credit, you can get secure, use them to collateralize into other assets. And so I think that that's great advice, is to, try to keep everything. And then, I mean, I think that that's amazing. Like, I would do that. I would go, if I were to go back into my 20s, I'd do the same thing. I'd figure out ways. And the other thing I loved about what you said was, and we do this a lot, and we talk a lot about this in high performance coaching, is that learner mindset, the curiosity mindset, the growth mindset, where we're not we're just going like, hey, I'm gonna go buy a duplex. I'm gonna move into it. I'm gonna fix it up a little bit. I'm gonna learn how it's what it takes to deal with the renters and deferred maintenance or just the maintenance of the property in general and the neighbors and all of that, and then learn how to leverage that in. And we talk a lot about in coaching like these frameworks, right? And I already talked about clarity, having the roadmap. That's one. Having the right people in the right seats. But like bigger picture, it's about being aware of these opportunities that you have in front of you, having alignment with where you really want to go in life. Basically, like, who wouldn't want recurring revenue and be able to be financially free by the time they're 35, 40 years old, and
Absolutely. I see people now, this is crazy to me, but I think it's so awesome, where they have enough passive income through their rentals. They're literally taking round the world cruises and unplugging for how many ever months around the world cruises. I don't know. I've never unplugged for that long, but like, wow, it's giving yourself permission to do these things and to live the dream. And it's not that they're not working. They worked hard to acquire what they had, but at a relatively young age, I'm watching these people raise their families on Princess Cruise Lines. I'm like, what? This is awesome. But somebody got to them and they were open-minded and they learned how to do it. And I'm just a really firm believer. And I'm so excited because, like I said, during COVID, this client taught me how he converted his 401k into all of this real estate. And now his portfolio looks like a monopoly board. He literally owns, single family residences all next to each other on different streets. So it's like, wow, cool. That is neat. He's living the monopoly game. I love it.
Yeah, it's so cool. And, like you said, it's not necessarily that the goal is to like flat out just retire and do nothing or just travel the world necessarily. It might be up to you, like how you do that. But really, it gives you the flexibility to make the impact to serve at higher levels and to live the life, a really vibrant life. And that, like, what bigger purpose is there than to pay attention to these types of things that can, give you a lifestyle that can allow you to do that. It's really great.
And I can say one other thing too, that personally, as a landlord, I have a goal to provide safe, stable, and affordable housing for my tenants. I really feel that there's a huge need for that right now. And I want to be that kind of landlord. And you can decide what works best for you, what mindset works best. And I want to be that kind of landlord. I want to provide safe housing for people.
Well, you're amazing. And thank you so much for doing what you do. And then, being on the right side of the world where we're moving things forward, we're positive, we're like improving things and giving people opportunities, and so great. So anyway, I want to thank you for being on this LinkedIn Live event. If anybody's watching out there, I'm glad you could at least spend a few minutes to listen to this, and it is going to be recorded and available. I'll probably on like your website. I'll put it up on my website too. Sure. And hopefully it can benefit some people out there, and maybe we can do some additional events in the future. That'd be great.
Well, thank you so much for this opportunity and getting good, positive messages out there. That is a dream for me. So thanks for this.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, Chris. And then one last thing, if people want to get a hold of you to talk about this, like what would be the next step?
Feel free to email chris@craneloan.com or my cell phone, 425-327-2000. It's Crane Financial Group. And talk, text, email, however you're most comfortable. I am here and I always answer.
Okay, awesome. And they can find you on LinkedIn. And then for me, it's also this nate@nateshort.com. And also, maybe it's possible to just schedule a time if you want to put together a meeting with Chris and I, like to talk about a plan. That's also possible where we just jump on Zoom. I mean, I love, or whatever the Google, I use Google Meet a lot too. But whatever that looks like for you, I think it's really easy to do that, to put this kind of thing in motion. So
looking forward to it. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Really quick tidbit, really fast. I just want to say, we don't have to do hard pull credit reports to figure out what people qualify for anymore. And that's been one of the biggest objections. People don't want a hard pull on their credit. We can do a soft pull and still get a bona fide pre-approval letter out. So that's something brand new. Just wanted to get that.
I love it. That's awesome.
Okay.
But that's another thing people worry about, like, oh, they got to pull my credit, you know, all these different things. So there's definitely opportunities. Well, thanks again, Chris, and
Thank you.
see you
I
next time.
appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.